I know a lot of folks here obviously are coming from the business world as well. So really tying back everything that you'll learn today, but also do today at the poker table and how it ties back to decision making. I've been a career entrepreneur for the last 10 years, recently transitioned to becoming a professional poker player. After playing recreationally or semi-pro for the last 5 years, I've made over 900,000 Canadian playing live tournaments. And I think my success that I've had in poker has helped me a lot in terms of how I've run businesses, including this club here, which I'll share a bit about and what we're all about as you guys get to experience this today. But V Club is essentially started as a social club for entrepreneurs and startup investors because there was a lot of overlap between people who are incredibly ambitious in life, which I'm sure, as many of you notice, and especially if the more experienced poker players in the room, with that intersection of entrepreneurs and ambitious business people with poker. And so ultimately, our mission here is to create more poker players through education, through community, and events like this with incredible partners like CanBuilt. Why poker? And ultimately, it's a game for everyone. And I love that there's such a great diversity of people here, from complete beginners to experienced players. Whether you're playing for hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, or you're playing for a few cents, there's a game that's available for everyone. And the decisions are, it's a simple game to pick up and understand, but is incredibly complex if you want to dive deep and become really good at the game. It's the best player is not guaranteed to win in any given night. So unlike basketball, let's say, or most other sports, if you're going to step on the court with LeBron James, you are very unlikely to beat him or potentially even score a basket. But you could sit at the table with the best poker player in the world and have a non-zero chance of winning, and probably a decent chance of winning just based on how the cards run out, which is quite unique out of any other sport that exists. And lastly, it does have a lot of tangible and transferable skills to business. A couple of my favorite quotes about poker from a few notable business folks or startup founders out there. So Sam Altman, the CEO at OpenAI, has said the two things that has taught him the most about business has been poker and angel investing. Paul Graham, the founder of Y Combinator, the world's most successful startup incubator, has noticed empirically a high correlation effectively between poker players, or people who are between playing poker and being a successful startup founder. And then Chamath Palihapitiya, a fellow Canadian of ours, but co-host of All In Podcasts, has said that poker is the best training ground for business. I'd like to ask you guys, what is poker to you? How would you guys define poker and what it means, what this game is? Strategy, yes. What else? Way to lose money, yes. Or win money. That's true. Risk, yes, love that. Decision making, mind games, yes. Psychology, love it, love it. I think the beauty is just the diversity of things that come into this game. So we talk about probability, game theory, risk, all these things that involve in risk, but there's also the mind battle, the mental sport of it all. You don't necessarily need to have the best hand, but you can win if you're in your opponent's head and you can kind of make the best decisions that way. There's discipline, and there's this idea of getting on tilt and being so emotional because you've lost. And because it's tied to money, it can really surprise us at how we sort of respond as humans to this. So it's a beautiful mix of all these things, which makes it such a special game. Which comes to kind of the first takeaway and how poker helps us make better decisions, is that poker ultimately helps us understand risk. It gives us this experience with risk, and to kind of explain that further, I'll define risk in this idea of that risk is the potential for negative outcomes in the pursuit of our goals. So if we pursue anything meaningful, there's always inherently an element of risk. Nothing is guaranteed, whether we're trying to go for a promotion at work, or we're trying to get a new job, or let's say we're trying to sell our company. There's a level of risk involved that there's going to be a negative outcome where we don't achieve that goal, or there's going to be factors outside of our control that potentially affect that outcome that are outside of our control. And conversely, or consequently, poker, like life, is a game of incomplete information. So for the beginners that we had just sat down, you had your two cards. You have no idea what your opponent's cards are, what cards are going to come out on the flop, turn, or the river. And life is very much similar. You don't necessarily know what life's going to throw at you, what the weather is going to be tomorrow that's going to prevent you from showing up to work on time or missing that really important deadline or business meeting, whatever it may be. So poker, like life, is a game of incomplete information. And to best illustrate this, I'll compare this to chess, where chess, conversely, is a game of complete information. we know every single piece that we have on the board. We know every single piece our opponents have on the board. And every time one of us makes a decision, we see exactly what happens. And whether we lose or win this game is a direct result of the decisions that we make in this game. So taking this back to the poker example, in poker, you only see 2 cards, the variation that we're playing, Texas Hold'em. You only see 2 cards out of a 52 card deck, which is 3.58% of all the possible cards out there. So if you take this back to chess, that's like if you were playing a game of chess, but you could only see 2.5 squares. And imagine trying to make a decision in chess about where you want to move your piece without knowing where any of your opponent's pieces are, or potentially 90% of your own pieces. So this is where this is the idea of now playing a game of incomplete information, which much more mirrors the decisions that we actually have to make in real life, because we don't know what's going on in our opponents' heads or coworkers' heads or managers' heads. And as we go about this game, we start to unveil more and more pieces of this chessboard. Every decision we make, every bet that we make. And like when the flop gets revealed, we start to see more and more. But at no point in poker do we ever see 100% of the board. And at no point in life do we see 100%, have 100% clarity on all the factors that might be involved into a decision that we're making. So this coming to the conclusion that effectively every decision in life that we make is a bet. Just like in poker, we're making a decision to put $5 there or call $5 or raise to $10 without knowing what our opponent's cards are, but thinking that we want to press our advantage because we think we may have the best hand. And when we're doing this in life as well, we're doing this without complete information. We're making a bet where there's an inherent level of risk that it may not work out for us, but we're choosing to do it anyways because of the information that we have. Where I think poker becomes incredibly important is once you've understood this risk, it helps you actually evaluate risky decisions. Thinking about separating the outcomes from decisions with what actually makes good fundamental decision making. And I'll ask this, which is to you guys, which is what do you think the goal in poker is? What is your goal today when you come here to play poker? Take all the chips. Yes, win. Hopefully make some money. So what I'll usually coach my students on is that they'll come in with poker and they'll be playing poker and they're like, I want to get rich. I want to make a lot of money. I'm like, that's great, but that's not your goal in poker. Ultimately, what you want to do is you want to win EV, expected value. And if you're making positive EV decisions, the outcome will be over the long term that you will be making money. But you want to be focused on that decision-making process. So to quickly explain expected value, it's basically this formula, which is the probability of winning times what is the actual outcome of you winning, plus the probability of losing times the outcome of you losing. So in a very, very simple example, we'll take a simple coin toss, which we know is a 50-50 heads, 50% tails. Let's say you get $2 every time it's heads, and you lose $1 every time it's tails. Intuitively, I think this is a bet that we would probably just all know to take. The actual math of it is that if we flip this coin, we're making 50 cents. Our expected value is 50 cents on every single coin flip. And that means if we flip this coin 1,000 times, our expected outcome of this is going to be $500. And the more you increase that frequency or how many bets that you're making, then you're just going to be printing money over time. And that's analogous to a couple industries as well that we may be familiar with. But in general, in poker, you want to make sure that you are making decisions that are always plus EV. You might lose that coin flip the first 10 times and be down $10, but you know that over the long term that you're going to be making money. So a couple industry-related examples is venture capital, where let's say you have a venture capital firm that's writing 100K checks into 100 companies. Let's say 99% of them go to zero. But what they're banking on, their expected value equation that they have in their head is that they're going to have one company potentially that makes it to 100 million. So they have a lot of losing bets, but the expected value of every single bet that they make is still 901,000 if they have one that makes it to 100 million. So that's where these guys are evaluating on a day-to-day basis, what's the expected value of every single one of these bets, knowing that 90% of our bets are going to zero. A different example is in insurance, where instead they're making, let's say, $200 charging hundreds or thousands of companies for insurance. And there's one scenario where they might have to pay out an insurance claim of $100,000, but they know that their general expected value is still going to be positive, almost $100 in every single one of these insurance packages that they sell, because they're looking again at this expected value equation when they're selling their product of insurance. So in life and business, what poker ultimately teaches us is that we want to be making plus EV decisions. It helps us actually evaluate. I mean, it teaches us this very basic equation of expected value, and we have to try to think about how do we relate that to our day-to-day decisions that we might make. But we want to generally be making plus EV decisions. The last sort of takeaway from poker, and the beauty of what you guys are all going to be having today, is that poker is ultimately, and why it becomes such a great training ground for business, is that it allows you to get a ton of reps at risk. In a single poker hand that might play out over 5 minutes, you might be making 10 or 12 decisions at risk. And sure, they might be for like $1 or tens of dollars or maybe hundreds of dollars, but every single one of these builds your confidence in decision making under risk, which ultimately might impact your confidence when you, let's say, are deciding whether to sell your company for $1 million or negotiate a multi-$100,000 deal. And one example that I'll share, so I was at a conference at the All In Summit many, many years ago, and there's this lady named Jenny Just, who was the founder of one of the most successful venture capital firms of all time. When looking at the VC industry as a whole, which we know to be largely male dominated, and she was trying to answer this question of why do we see a lot more women in venture capital than we do men? And especially the ones that come to her with the same skill set, but some are, let's say, getting promoted faster or rising up the ranks higher. And ultimately, through a couple of years of research, what she found is that men inherently just had a lot more reps at risk growing up. And they were encouraged to play games like poker, to do the thing that maybe was they're breaking their bones, whereas women were more so pushed to take the safe path. So where she kind of came to her conclusion on that is a lot of people's confidence when they do step into, let's say, their careers, and whether it's seeking promotions or moving on to making these risky decisions in life, comes back to just practice and reps and experience. And the more reps that you build at risk, the more confidence you'll be able to do to continue doing that again and again. So right now, she's actually started a foundation called, and I'm blanking on the name right now, but I will find that for you guys later. But she started a foundation basically on a mission to teach 1 million women in the world how to play poker. Ultimately, with this goal of helping them build reps at risk so that they'll have more confidence, whether it be in the boardroom or whether making investing deals. Ultimately, it's all just practice, right? You can take this back and then think about how do I apply some of this back to the decision making that I make in my day-to-day life. So I'll end with some actual practical tips for you guys as you're playing today, which there's this concept in poker called population tendencies. So as poker pros, we'll literally study databases of players across an entire population, and we'll see where do people tend to skew their decision making. What is a pretty common population tendency, especially amongst recreational players, people who don't play professionally, is that people are too passive. So a lot of recreational players are risk averse and they're afraid to put their chips in the middle and operate in sort of this scarcity mentality. And I think one kind of funny example that sort of illustrates this is there was this one sort of computer science competition where you had to build kind of the best AI model to perform in poker. And so this person who posted anonymously once won first place by literally just building an AI bot to play poker that just said, if it's my turn, go all in. I'm not necessarily saying go all in on every single decision, but experiment. Experiment with being aggressive, experiment with putting chips in, see what happens, and worst case, you can always rebuy within that first hour, but have fun with it. And I'll end here with kind of the main takeaways from this is really how poker ultimately helps us improve at decision making is through understanding risk, evaluating risky decisions, and then getting a ton of reps at risk. So that's it from me.